So we are going to get into a little bit of a draft here and go through our favorite positions, position groups on this team, kind of discussing what makes these the strongest groups on Oregon's team, why we're so excited about them. And kind of figure out where this team's strengths are really going to be as we head into this season. So, Owen, I'll go ahead and give way to you and let you take the first pick here. What is your favorite position group on this team that you think is just the overall the strongest?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before, and there's a couple spots. I really don't feel like there's a clear number one. And you can say that that's a benefit, right? You can say that, hey, this team is strong everywhere. You can also say, hey, maybe this team, it isn't like a wide receiver powerhouse. Maybe it's doesn't have the best running back room in the country to hang its hat on. And so that's interesting. I'm gonna go with the defensive line group, including we're gonna put the edges and the interior defensive linemen in there, the pass rushers. That group of starting group, we assume, of Mateo Uiagalelei, Amari Washington, Bear Alexander, Tatum Tuioti, that makes me feel like this team can stay in any game. It's some of the most experienced guys on this team. You got the Big Ten leader in sacks from last year. Bear Alexander is a Big Ten quantity. He's played in the SEC. He's played in the Big Ten. Amari Washington showed what he could do last year, and Tatum Tuioti really did perform as a sophomore. I'm excited to see what he can do as a junior. We talk about depth too. You got a former 5-star there, Elijah Rushing, just waiting. Blake Purchase there, Aiden Breland, another former 5-star. There's quality on the top, but I feel like in terms of when you look at groups here that are both really strong and have great depth, this is the one that I go to.
Yeah, like you said, experience is really just the thing that stands out. Mateo Uiagalelei and Tatum Tuioti, both of those guys started the entire season last year as true sophomores off the edge, and they're going to be back this year as juniors. Both of them also got a lot of playing time as freshmen. Those are we know what Mateo Uiagalelei can do. He's projected into the first round of this upcoming draft. But Tatum Tuioti, a guy that's really solid against the run and shows the ability to kind of play more of an outside linebacker role than a traditional defensive end stuff, kind of dropping back into coverage when he needs to, just being a versatile piece that Dan Lanning can use wherever he needs. And then, like you said, on the interior, Bear Alexander got experience at Georgia, got experience at USC. The USC experience didn't really end the way he wanted it to, but it's a really talented player. He was recruited by Dan Lanning at Georgia. And if things work out for him, could be an absolute game wrecker on the inside as that 3-tech. And then Amari Washington, maybe the name I'm most excited about. I don't know if you did you read what Bruce Feldman wrote about him in the freaks list.
Yep.
But yeah, hitting over 20 miles an hour, vertical jumping, like I think 36 inches it was at his size at almost 330 pounds. Dude's just a freakish athlete on the inside, and he replacing Jamari Caldwell as that nose tackle who can move between a little bit at a 0 into a 2-eye into a 1 technique, just up the middle, stuffing the run, but also being able to use that athleticism to be able to make plays in the backfield, get to the quarterback, get to the ball carrier. I'm just really excited about what Amari Washington can do on the inside, and in him and Bear Alexander as a tandem, I think is really exciting. And then, like you said, also the depth that they have, some of the young guys, Elijah Rushing, a Heisman winner for me on my college football dynasty, just an absolute beast off the edge
right now.
Yeah. And then Aiden Breland, another guy I'm really excited about. He got to talk last week after one of their practices and was just kind of talking about his athletic background, and just a guy that at his size, at 6'5", nearly 300 pounds, just a really, really good athlete. And I'm excited to see the way he can use that and translate that onto the football field, because he talked about having doing Taekwondo when he was a kid, doing jiu-jitsu as a kid. As a big MMA fan myself, if football doesn't work out for him, I'd love to see him save the UFC's heavyweight division. So just a really exciting athlete, and to see what he can do on the football field this year as a sophomore. I think mixing him in with Bear Alexander and kind of in that 3-tech, getting him in for some pass rush downs is going to be really exciting this year.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that just to tag this on is the defensive line is one of the spots that Oregon's been strongest at developing when you look at guys that come in as recruits and out of the portal.
Especially the portal, what they've done in
absolutely.
Recent years,
especially with Harmon.
A single year with Harmon, and he goes in the first round. A single year with Jamari Caldwell, and he's drafted to the NFL. And then obviously Jordan Birch was a very talented player. It was a 5-star recruit going to South Carolina, but just harnessing that athleticism and turning him into a legitimate weapon off the edge for this team last year. Just excited to see what they can do on that D line.
Very happy with him at 101.
Yeah, that was the pick I definitely would have taken as well. I think I think it's just the strongest overall position group on the team because you have the most knowns. You know that Mateo Uiagalelei is going to be really good. You really think that Bear Alexander and Amari Washington can plug up that middle and create a lot of disruption in the middle. So I think that's definitely the top one to go with. Um, Looking at the board here, if I had to make my first pick, I think I got to go with the running backs just because you got a really talented guy, Mekhi Hughes, who has like he's not a given in terms of his production at Oregon, but we saw it the last 2 years at Tulane. He's been one of the top rushers in the country, a guy who can hit holes, get downhill, run through tackles, just a really talented running back and a guy that I think they're going to lean a lot on. The Ducks are going to lean a lot on this year because not that the quarterback room is a question mark necessarily, but it's a young quarterback room. You don't have it's not the same as what it's been for the past couple of years for Will Stein, where he's had literally like the two most experienced college quarterbacks of all time in Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix, where you really, really trust those guys to set everything up right on the offense, put everyone in the right places. This year, Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, you think those guys can kind of do the things that Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix did really well, but you want to kind of take that load off of them with a really strong running game, and I think Mekhi Hughes is the foundation of that. And then behind him, just having Noah Whittington back, a guy that's really experienced, knows the offense really well. Will Stein trusts in there as a blocker and as a receiver, a 6-year senior, a just real leader on this team, I think is another really solid pickup for my draft to get those two guys together. And then some exciting pieces behind them. We'll see what Jaden Lamar can do. Jay Harris and Dewan Riggs are two guys that have a lot of potential. Jay Harris came in last year listed 6'2", 215. This year he's listed 6'2", 225. Just continues to be become even bigger and bigger at the running back position. And so if those guys can start work again, I think this could be a really talented group back there. But yeah, overall, Mekhi Hughes is absolutely the reason. He's one of the for running backs, it really is the main guy that counts the most. Kind of similar to quarterback or tight end, position you only have really one of the guys that has on the field. And if I had to take anybody, I think Mekhi Hughes is one of the people on this entire team that I trust the most this season.
Yeah, it's exactly where I'd go. I'd say that, if I'm drafting skill position players, Mekhi Hughes is probably number one in terms of, production that I can trust. There's obviously a question mark with him coming from a G5 school at Tulane into the Big Ten. There's always going to be a transition there, but he feels like, one of the things that you feel good, especially when we talk about my next pick. I'm also excited, kind of about the bottom half of this room. I feel like it's got some of the best potential out there. We've seen these guys for definitely limited stats. Jay Harris absolutely did not play as much as maybe we expected him to last year, but that's a guy who I'm excited about. Joan Riggs, that Washington game was exciting. We saw him come in at the end. These are all guys who I feel like have pop. And
exactly.
But sorry, please.
No, yeah. Where are you going with this next pick here?
I mean, and they have pop, because of one reason. That's because I'm taking the offensive line. You're taking a little bit of a guess here because there's only one returning starter. And that center Pancho Laulu. But these are guys who are huge. And they've got proven college experience, and that's why I feel okay taking them here over some of these other maybe less experienced groups that are still very talented. I feel like these guys are more guaranteed success. Oregon's had great offensive lines, especially the last 2 years. Joe Moore Award finalists. And this feels like just another group that can follow in that path. There's also there's talented guys behind them too. Davey Woolley, Janoris Wilson, recruits like Fox Crater, former starters Charlie Pickard, Kawika Rogers. These are guys I'm excited about, but the starters really sell me on this group. I feel like they'll be strong, and we've heard a lot about how well, especially this group, has worked together. Terry just talked yesterday. We heard from a bunch of these guys at Media Day. I'm excited. I'm happy to have both the lines. We got the big boys.
Yeah, like you said, it looks like on paper, it looks like you see Pancho as the only returning starter at center. You feel like you get a little bit worried about the line, but then you look across it. Isaiah World, top ranked transfer, a bunch of starting experience at Nevada. Emmanuel Pregnon, another top ranked transfer, a bunch of starting experience at USC. Matthew Bedford was a guy who was in the program last year, missed most of the season with an injury, but brought starting experience from before at Indiana. And then Alex Harkey, Another guy coming up from the G5 at Texas State, but starting experience at right tackle. So it's a new offensive line group, but it's a veteran offensive line group at the same time. And I've been really excited to hear just a talk coming out of camp about how much of a leader that Pancho has been for this team and for a lot of the young guys in terms of trying to kind of meshing all the transfers together. I think that's really exciting to hear because the center is such an underrated position on the football field often because you got to be able to get the offensive line set, make sure everybody's blocking protections are everyone knows what their blocking assignments are and stuff like that. And to hear that Pancho is taking more of a vocal role, we saw him in the little like the mini doc that they release every like the 20-minute doc that they do. When they climbed Spencer's Butte this year, Pancho was one of those guys that was making the speech to the team and kind of like letting them know what it's going to be like this year. And I think that's really exciting to see because he's a guy that's really, really talented on the inside of that offensive line and could be a Remington Award. I think he was one of the preseason like Remington Award honorees, and he's a guy that could find himself there at the end of the season and could find himself going in on day 2 of the NFL draft potentially. So another really good pick there. For me, if I had to look to where I'm thinking next, I got to go to the other side of the ball and go with my first pick on defense. Take the linebacker group. Bryce Betcher, you know what he is. He's really, really solid, a really athletic guy, obviously a gold glove center fielder on the baseball field, but really kind of put it all together on the football field last year as a leader for this team, is going to be one of the biggest leaders for this team going into this season. But a really athletic linebacker who can come downhill, make hits in the hole. Loves doing that. We'll talk to you all baseball season about how excited he is to go hit people once football season starts. So, and then Devin Jackson next to him, one of the most athletic players on this team. I think he's been clocked over 23 miles an hour on the treadmill. Just in terms of pure athlete, like pound for pound, it's hard to argue against him being the best athlete on this team because doing that at his size at 235, 240 pounds, almost he talked about how he's put on more strength in the offseason. I think that's really exciting because those two guys are gonna, and he's got two he was that third linebacker behind Betcher and behind Jeff Bossa last year. So another guy that he's coming into a new role as a starter, but I think he played almost 400 snaps last season. He's got a lot of experience on the field and got experience in big games last year. So just the fact that you got this two guys in the starting role where you got experience and you kind of trust them, and then some exciting guys behind them. Gavin Nix, a freshman, I think I've heard a lot about him already. A lot of people are excited about what he can do. And then some of the young guys like Braden Platt and Kamar Matudi, you just want to see them kind of mixing in a little bit more, kind of getting into that role that Devin Jackson had last year. And I think you got a lot of talent in that group. And so I'm excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, I'm really curious here because, I'd say maybe this is one of the more underrated groups that Oregon has. When you maybe look at, where they're ranked nationally and where they sit. But I think what you're saying is spot on that, you've seen how guys who are really great athletes, regardless of maybe their position, can come play at this team. Jeff Bossa was a safety when he came to Oregon. He became one of the Doug's best linebackers.
Betcher played safety his first go around on the football team. Like they've done a good job at taking those guys who are good athletes, putting on a little bit, putting a little bit of muscle, put a little bit of weight on them, and turn them into really good linebackers.
Absolutely, and these are smart guys too. That's what we know. We talked to Betcher. We talked to I actually haven't talked to Jackson this season yet. But these are the guys that you want right in the middle of that defense, right behind the edge rushers who are going to be so great.
Exactly. So, and you took the defensive line first, then you went back to the trenches, took the offensive line. You got one on each side of the ball. You got one more offensive group and one more defensive group to add to your team here. Where are you going to go with your next pick?
I'm going to roll with the field goal blocking unit. I feel really good. I was between a couple for this one. I'll be curious to see who you go with next. But I'm going to start with the safeties because we talked about how we weren't really concerned about a drop off with this group with the McNutt injury, and that's why I'm going to them. Dylan Thieneman was one of the best safeties in the portal. He was great at Purdue last year, and I think to have a guy like that next to some maybe more unproven guys is the reason that I feel confident in this group. If it's maybe a guy who's been in Oregon for a while but stepping into his first starting role instead of 31 there, I'm a little bit less confident I'll go somewhere else. But Dylan Thieneman, I feel like both has the experience to play well and to kind of take a guy under his wing, especially when you talk to him. Behind him, Kingston Lopa, maybe the projected starter, but like we talked about earlier in this podcast, Flowers, Woodyard, could also be options there, and Thieneman is what really excites me here. That's a guy when you're drafting Oregon players that sits high on one board.
I don't think he makes it out of the top 5.
You talk about guaranteed experience. There aren't many guys who have more experience and starting experience, high quality starting experience than Dylan Thieneman. I feel very confident that he'll be able to play next to a guy in this system and really show him a little bit.
Yeah, like you said, that experience and the leadership that he has next to those young guys in this room is really exciting because he's a guy not only can he can play multiple positions on the field. He was best at Purdue when he was used as a high safety over the top and was able to roam sideline to sideline and then come downhill. But we saw versatility from him, be able to work in the slot, be able to work in the box a little bit. So you got a group of young guys like that. You can kind of work them in and know that wherever you put Thieneman, he's going to be solid. He's going to do his job and he's going to get everything right. And also just for those guys to be able to every day in practice, they should be asking him questions. They're, trying to find out what he's thinking on certain plays because he's a really, really smart, really cerebral football player. That's something that really stood out to me when I got to talk to him at media day. Just talking about how important it is as a safety to be able to be a really good communicator on the backside, because especially in football nowadays, you got motions going left and right. You talk about traditionally the middle linebacker being the quarterback of the defense, but I think we could really see Dylan Thieneman be one of the strong leaders for this defense, because as a safety, you got to be able to make sure you're communicating with everyone else in the secondary, make sure the coverages are set. One guy motions from one side to the other, make sure you know who covers him, who's supposed to you're bracketing this guy, who's got their zone deep, who's got their zone shallow. I think having a guy like Thieneman with that leadership experience in that room, super important, just in terms of making sure all those young guys are going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then hopefully learning from that and then applying it to when he's gone next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not a guy that, takes long to get embedded with this team. I remember immediately when he transferred in the spring, we were able to talk to guys and they were talking about how much of like a demon in the weight room this guy was, how he was always watching film.
Yeah, he said at media day he shows up to the facility at 5:30 a.m. every day. He's the first one there.
Insane, and that's something that these guys noticed immediately. And so not only for them to notice it, but to call it out in those spring practices is something that tells me this guy. I'm not only am I not concerned about his quality, about his leadership, but I'm not concerned that it's going to take a while to settle in.
Yeah, definitely. All right,
where are we going?
All right, so with my next pick, I took the linebackers, and then I took I took the running back. So I got the running backs and the linebackers. You talk about the safeties. Going back to the other side of the ball, kind of their counterpart on offense, the tight ends. That's my next state group that I'm really excited about. Obviously, Kenyon Sadiq is the guy. Could be the guy in this offense for the Ducks. When Will Stein got a chance to speak after their practice the other day, he talked about how they've been an 11 personnel team. It's been Tez in the slot, Stewart and Trayshawn and whoever they have at receiver. But because Evan Stewart's out this year, it might not look like that. He said it's just we don't know if it's going to look the same. I think the tight ends and the running backs that this team have will be really important in terms of stepping up for kind of where they is in experience at receiver, because you can go to more heavy sets, go to more of those 12 personnel looks with 2 tight ends, the 21 personnel mix, and then 2 back sets. You got Oregon is thought of to be this team that's, because of the Chip Kelly era and everything, that's spread out and it's fast and everything. But Will Stein's offense they're built on running the football. Last year they split it about 50-50 in terms of running the pass, and that's because you had guys like Patrick Herbert in there who were you could put in at tight end next to Terrence Ferguson. You go the 2 of them and then run the football with that 12 personnel look. But also you can you play action and flip it out. All of a sudden you got Terrence Ferguson in open space, and he was second in the country last year in yards after the catch for tight ends. The only person ahead of him was Kenyon Sadiq. So I think there's just a lot of excitement about what this tight end room can do in terms of kind of expanding the offense. And tight ends are one of my favorite positions because they really are like a chess piece on the field, because tight ends are not an indicator of run or pass, because a good tight end can do both. And so I think this is a room that you kind of have that. where Kenan Sadiq's he can be he's a versatile piece at tight end. At 6'3" is a bit smaller, but more of a move tight end. Use him off the line, use him in the slot a little bit, kind of get him in motion. They handed the ball to him on jet sweeps a lot last year just because of how good of an athlete he is, and you could see that when he hurdled the guy in the Big Ten championship game. So I think he has a very strong chance to lead this team in receptions this year, or at least be kind of Dante Moore's number one option within this offense. And then Jamari Johnson, another guy that really excites me from Louisville, just really, really big. He said he's gotten down to I think around like 255 it was. He's lost a little bit of weight from where he was at Louisville, where it was more towards like 265. But at 6'6", 6'7", almost, just a really big dude you can stick on the line and use as like a traditional tight end and can move people in the run game, can be an option in the red zone because of his size. And then some of the depth behind it that they have, guys like Roger Saliapaga, who was one of the guys who didn't redshirt last year as a true freshman because he was so valuable on special teams. They wanted to have him out there, got it some work at tight end. And then Vander Plug, flipping him from Washington, was a really big time recruit and just a guy that I think this program is excited about in terms of the athlete he can be and the receiving threat he can be. We'll see how it plays out as a freshman, but a lot of talented young guys behind. And I also want to give a shout out to Zach Grace. Zach Grace often gets overlooked within tight ends because he's not really a tight end. They used him as a fullback last year, but to be able to kind of give that versatile look when you want to go under center, use a real fullback, like we said with the Seahawks, we saw the presence of Robbie Outs in that preseason game. I like fullback. I like getting under the center and running the football like that, and I think Zach Grace just having the option to do that. I remember last year I thought honestly the first time I saw him out there in that number 44, I thought were using Tatum Tuioti on offense, and he got more of a role throughout the season. I'm excited to see what he continues to do for this team.
Yeah, I mean the bar is really high for tight ends right now. You just sent potentially your best tight end in school history, certainly one of the best. He owns a ton of the records to the NFL draft, and he was taken by one of the guys on the very front of the game in terms of playing in 21 and 12 personnel. He went to the Rams. That excites me. It says that this team not only has strong tight ends, but it's a team that has tight ends right at the front of where you think the game is going. These are guys who aren't gonna be sealed to one traditional role. They're going to be asked to do more than tight ends have done in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Owen, you got the safeties and you've got the defensive line on your defense. You've got the offensive line on your offense. You got one more group on offense. Who are you looking at here?
So if I'm looking at this right, I have a pick between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. And this is, I feel like, really indicative of who I think is going to be more important to this team's offense, and that's why I'm a little bit worried about this. I think I'm going to roll with the quarterbacks. I was really tempted by the wide receivers because DeCorian Moore is, we just saw him come out as the best freshman in college football in that ranking. Gary Bryant Jr. is some proven talent there, but, especially with Dickey not being with the team, Kyler Casper is a very unproven talent. Gary's been out with injury for a long time. It's a little bit too much for me to bet on there. I believe in Dante Moore. That's where I'll go with this. I think that, I do think that Moore will be the starter. And I feel like the fact that we've talked about it, the year in Will Stein's system behind one of the most experienced quarterback, let me give him his flowers in college football, Dylan Gabriel, gives me some confidence that alleviates the fears that we saw with that UCLA year. That doesn't mean that I think it's guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed in football, but the arm talent excites me. There's more here that excites me than that wide receiver room. I'm going to roll with that.
Yeah, like you said, like just the practice reps that he got last year, the experience that he got, not in game time, but experience in the offense against one of the top defenses in the country last year that you would have been going against every day in practice, and a defense that can give you a lot of different looks overall. So I'm excited about what he can do for this offense. We've heard Dan Lanning talk about the first scrimmage. He said the defense won. They did a good job at limiting the explosive plays from the offense, but he's seen recently the offense kind of find those explosives and be able to find those explosives, not just because Dante Moore has a really strong arm and can hit those deep balls downfield, but explosives in the screen game, explosives in the run game. And I think that's the things that a good offense and a good quarterback can open up. And that's what the Ducks have done so well in recent years with with Gabriel and with Nix is creating explosives when you don't have a quarterback who hucks it 50 yards down the field to create those explosives. You can create explosives like throwing it to a guy like Gary Bryant in the slot, and he makes a couple guys at Arizona State miss, and all of a sudden that's a 70-yard touchdown. So I'm excited to see what Dante Moore can do, and just in terms of him being a kind of a point guard of this offense and distributing the ball and kind of realizing that I don't have to make those plays every time. I have really talented playmakers around me. Let's get the ball to these guys, get them out in space, and see what they can do with it. That's what Oregon wants their quarterbacks to be doing. That's what Bo Nix did for this offense. It's what Dylan Gabriel did for this offense. I think that's the basis for Dante Moore. That's what they want him to kind of start with and be able to distribute and stuff like that. And then from there, can we start hitting Decorian more on those deep shots? Can we hit Kenyon Sadiq over the middle and let him run after the catch? So excited to see what this quarterback room can do. And I don't want to count out Austin Novosad either. It's been pretty quiet in terms of what has been said about the quarterbacks coming out from camp so far. They are calling it a competition. Dante Moore is the expected to be the starter, just kind of the pedigree he has, starting experience before at UCLA. But Austin Novosad, a guy who could, if he plays well in fall camp, we could see him starting for this team. So I don't want to count him out at all, but you definitely a talented room of guys, and the more talented guys you have back there are pushing each other in practice, competing, the better product you're gonna get on the field.
Yeah, shout out to one of the fastest guys in college football, Luke Moga. Never forget that spring game touchdown.
Oh yeah. Okay, so with my last,
I think you only got one pick, right?
I could show some love to the kickers and the punters. I could go with that, but if I had to, or the special teams group, but I'll take the cornerbacks here to round out the defense. This is secondary in general. It's all new. It's 5 new starters out there, and the quarterbacks are an interesting group because you got two guys in. You got some guys with experience, but who haven't played before this team before, and then you got some guys who haven't really yet played that much at all yet at the college level, at the stage that Oregon can put teams on, but really talented and really exciting in terms of just their physical abilities and what they can do potentially down the line for this team. But Jaleel Flores, a guy that started for this team 2 years ago before he had that knee injury that held him out for all of last season, unfortunately. He was a guy that could have made a big impact for this team and would have been probably a starter last year had it not been for that injury. But getting him back in this defense to probably in a starting role like he was a couple of years ago, exciting to see, just because you know that Tosh Lupoy trusts him on that backside. You know that Chris Hampton trusts him on that backside because of what he has proven against some of the top competition in college football. He was out there guarding those 3 receivers from Washington, even if those games didn't end up the way the Ducks wanted them to. You're playing some of the best players in the country. And then Theron Johnson from transfer from Northwestern, another guy that just a lot of starting experience and in the Big Ten. He started last 2 years for Northwestern. It's Northwestern. They're not really a football school, but you're playing Big Ten football week in and week out for that team. So that just that experience that he brings is really fun to really exciting to see. And then the two my 2 fun guys that I like to talk about, Sione Laulea and then Ife Obadegwu. I think we have the expected starters in Jaleel Florence and Theron Johnson, but I would not be surprised to see those guys really push themselves towards putting themselves in the rotation and potentially even getting a starting spot at some point. Sione Laulea, just the physical tools he has as a 6'4" cornerback is really exciting. And Ife Obadegwu is probably getting the most excitement out of camp, out of maybe any player on the entire team. All the veterans are talking about him. The coaches are talking about what he's doing. He was a big recruit, missed all of last year almost with an injury as a freshman, but talked about how he was able to, take that process with him and be able to learn the playbook better, kind of study the defense, kind of learn some things that you kind of maybe need to take a step off the field to really see from that perspective, but being able to use that experience and make it valuable for him, even when he's not on the field getting those reps in practice. So excited to see what those guys can do. And then obviously the freshman you have down the line, 2 5-stars there in Brandon Finney and Naeem Offord. I doubt we'll see that much of them this year just because you do have a lot of guys in front of them, but excited to see what those guys can do in the future.
Yeah. So how do we feel about the wide receivers going undrafted here?
I think wide receivers going undrafted is just a testament to the things that we've said about them previously, that it is a group that it's just a lot of question marks. And because you got obviously then you lose Evan Stewart. Now you lose Jurion Dickey because of the suspension. You just got a lot of question marks in that room. DeCorian Morris, super talented. He's a freshman though. We saw Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams be really exciting freshmen for their teams last year. DeCorian Moore could absolutely have a season like that, but you never know because it's college football. He hasn't played at this level before. Tyler Casper, another guy that has some experience, has shown the flashes. Like you just got a lot of guys like that who like besides really Gary Bryant and Justice Lowe, like you don't have guys who have really played for this team before. So it's a lot of question marks. And I think, like we said, I think this team is going to rely less on their receivers, rely less on those 11 personnel looks, and kind of flesh things out with getting more physical in the trenches with some 12 and some 21.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty happy with my draft. You guys can tell us who you think won. I feel pretty good.